Get yourself a skinny brush that you plan on using for your outline. You know how I like this size brush. I think it's super convenient. I think it's nice, it's easy, it kind of gets in behind the cracks and crevices of your piece. I'm going to have to be really careful because I have red in my water. I was lazy and I didn't change my water out because I'm naughty. Such is life. All right, get your brush damp, not soaking wet, and not super dry. It's kind of like towel dry damp. You kind of want to get out of the shower, take a towel on your head, kind of rub it around on your head, and then you're left with slightly wet hair, but it's not dripping. Put your tiny brush into your black palette and sing happy birthday maybe once or twice to yourself. And you should get a thick layer of paint on your brush. And I would use that thick layer and just feather in your outline. Looks like I just need a very minuscule, tiny baby drop of water here because you can tell that my paintbrush is too dry, that you got some white peeping through here. Now, since our example is kind of like a clip arty example, I wouldn't worry too much about doing realistic shadow. If you want to do realistic shadow, you can probably look up a few images that are similar to these orca positions and try to figure out where to put your darks and your lights. But today we are mainly focusing on creating kind of like a cartoony look here. See, I'm running out of paint here. You can see the white coming through. So I'm going to set my outliner aside. I'm going to squeeze out and clean up my flat. And I am going to make sure that my flat is towel dry damp. Meaning I can touch it. There's wetness coming off of it, but it's not dripping with liquid. This will make sure that you can move this black around in a controlled manner. And we're just literally going to drag some of that black into the body of your orca. Using these black outlines as kind of like a barrier. Now the goal is just to move the black into the area that has black on your orca. You don't want to bring the black into your white spot, so just take your time. If you do, don't panic. I have a solution. You can always use, after your artwork dries completely, you can always use white oil pastel and put it over the white spot on your body if you accidentally paint over it. However, I just highly recommend you just take your time. Now, if you want this to be a little bit darker and you don't like how light the inside is, you can always take that outlining brush and add little dots of black into the body of your orca, like this. Kind of giving him little spots, and then you'll use your flat to fan out that color evenly across your orca's skin. And you can keep doing this. This will be a controlled way to add black without like muddying up your outline. It'll help give you control. If you wanted to add darker shadow underneath and you're going for that kind of extra shadow flare, You can, if you want to, like I said, we are focusing on a cartoony look today, so I wouldn't beat yourself up if you decide to just do a flat black all the way around. That's fine too. You might need to switch out for a baby brush or a tiny brush for this tail here. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to repeat step 1 with orca number 2. But you can add your background. That oil pastel will give you that vibrant, cartoony kind of look or feel. You can decide if you want seaweed, school of fish, a sunken ship. Totally up to you. Your art, your choice. A clamshell with a pearl in it. Totally up to you. And you can even add a layer for your sand, a layer of yellow, and maybe a darker oil pastel on top to add texture. That's kind of what I'm doing here. If you want to soften that texture, go back to your lighter color out of the two and just run it on top of that top layer here, and you'll literally soften those lines. You see how those lines softened there? They almost became painterly. This is called blending with oil pastel. A lot of artists like to combine techniques and mediums. This is a different medium, but you literally have that contrasty orange in there to kind of add some texture to your sand. You could even do this with like dots if you wanted little rocks in there. Totally up to you. I love how vibrant oil pastel is, so I'm going to use some of it to draw in the plant life in the sea as well, and to add pops of color to my piece. I'm just being really careful with the amount of paper I'm touching with my fingers because I don't want to risk getting a bunch of fingerprints all over my artwork that are full of oil pastel residue, because if that happens, then it will show through when I add my blue wash. I'm sticking with the cartoony theme here. I got really bold, vibrant, bright colors. I'm trying to avoid subtleties here. I'm looking for really cartoony characteristics. Now, if you want to do something different, go for it. Your art, your choice. We're literally just learning the science behind these two mediums, with it being oil and the chemical makeup of the oil itself, or like the molecule development of the oil itself inside your oil pastel is going to resist the water molecules inside your water. So you will literally have a wax resist here. Same thing, or an oil resist. Same thing with your crayon, if you decide to do this in crayon. Now I know I added some texture to my sand by using contrasting colors like brown and yellow, but now I kind of want to add a little pops of shadow to my plant life as well. I'm going to do this by adding a darker green to make that leaf kind of look more three-dimensional than it really is. I also want to mimic the granules or the dots in the sand, so I'm going to do this by applying some brown dots of oil pastel as well. And you can add shadows and stuff using like brown in your sand. And if your shadows are too strong, then you would just come back with that yellow and use the yellow as a blender. So here are my shadows, and I'm going to blend them and soften that brown so it becomes a soft color, not as stark and not as intense. Okay, when you are ready, see I have a little bit of thumbprints here. I put my thumbprints, I held my artwork near the seaweed, so if I need to, I can just literally add an additional seaweed if I have to, and do it right over that oily part if I need to. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. There's like little specks here. I'll show you with my watercolor. Now with a wash, you can have a wetter brush than normal. You know how we do our drag and pull technique? Using a dry on dry brush, like our brush is pretty, it's damp, but it's not soaking wet. You can use a brush that has a little bit more of a watery consistency. I would not go too crazy with it though. Remember, the more paint you have, the darker the blue. The more water you have, and the less paint, the lighter the blue. If that makes sense. I'm thinning this blue out by spreading it all the way across my paper. My paintbrush is a little bit more than towel dry damp, okay? I got a lot of paint on this brush, but I have a lot of space to move this paint into. So as you see, as I'm spreading it from one side of my paper to the other, it's going to start thinning out and becoming a little bit lighter. Be super careful around that black. If you start getting this, that means your paintbrush is getting too dry. Add a drop of water and continue. You might have to add a little bit of water at a time. That is okay. I'm going to do my best to paint around the seaweed, but if I get a little bit of water or a little bit of paint on there, it's alright because it will not stick to my painting. That's why we use the oil resist. I don't like how dark it is right here. So I'm going to pick up some of that. And I'm going to put it over here. You decide what you guys want to do. Your art, your choice. That's how you can lighten a color too. But it's literally easy straight from here. You might have to go back and add a little more water and paint, but it's literally just easy straight from here. You're literally just putting blue across your paper.